So we obviously got the big tease last night that Mayhem is coming, and low key, when you hear Mayhem, you have Bridget O'Reilly, then you went back through the first season. It's like, oh wait, you've been building this whole. The storyline with Connors is very similar to Falcone in the comics. What can you tell us about where you're heading with Bridget O'Reilly and that transition and the possible introduction of the Mayhem character going forward?
I mean, it's kind of what you said. We got very excited, the writers and I, when we were breaking the first season, because we knew who Mayhem was, and we knew Bridget began as a friend, and it was very exciting as writers to say, oh, low-key, we can start telling the origin story of the villain in the most ninja way possible. So it's just been fun. And then add on top of that, you have an actress like Emma Lahana, because we could have cast someone average or just good. She's done 2 episodes of our show where she hasn't said a word, and she's crushed it. I don't know if you guys have seen episode 9 yet. Doesn't say a word again, makes you want to cry, and you get to see. So I'm very excited, kind of in a Killmonger way, to bring in a villain who you kind of can relate with. And I think Mayhem, without spoiling too much, is kind of what we wish we all were if we didn't face consequences.
So you and Jeff teased yesterday production's going to start in the fall and that we'll see you sooner than we think. Now I would think next summer, that was your schedule this year. The sooner than you think mean February? Like, do you know? I've
learned over my life to never try to decipher what Jeff Loeb says. Everyone can do the same. We can all sleep better. They haven't told me if they've decided on a date. We've talked about eventually our kids won't be teenagers, and we'd love to get them on the air quicker than possible. But it's for people way smarter than I am, programming-wise, to put it on the air.
When you guys were casting, was them being age-appropriate important factor? We were talking about this earlier.
Super important. So Gina and I were kind of crazy about it because we didn't want to do the Dylan McKay. We didn't want to do the 32-year-old playing in high school, even though he was cool and had that little scar on his eyebrow. So it was hard because we needed to find actors of their age who also just had some life experience and just could just represent, the hope and the fear and the pain and the angst and the humanity and the love that Tandy and Tyrone have. And, it took us forever, and you guys have probably heard the story before, but we were 3 days before shooting and we got down to those guys, and the fact that we did was amazing, and in both of them, you just see humanity that I don't think you could find in anybody older, and probably not in anyone younger either.
Jumping off of that, there's a lot of really intense issues that these teen characters have to deal with. Everything from domestic abuse to sexual assault to a drug habit. What were your conversations with Freeform about that? Were they very supportive?
They were very supportive. I was always kind of getting my Irish up, getting ready for a fight when I'd come with them. It was interesting, even with the Fuchs staff, they were like, do you think it's necessary? And I literally had to send them the Wikipedia page for women in refrigerators. They're like, oh, we like this. I'm like, I can't believe I had to send it to you guys. But you know what? They're you have to give Freeform a lot of credit. The Fosters, they've had shows about addiction. They've had shows about regular films. They're looking to do a show about immigration. I think The Bold Type is one of the most aggressively feminist shows out there. So they're down to play. It's every once in a while you'll have to explain your intent, but they're almost always wanting us to push the envelope a little further.
With this show, you kind of went with a way of it being more of a chemical reaction that caused them to get their power. While one of the more traditional forms of it was that they were basically, experimented on with drugs, which led to them basically having their war against drugs. I think was a big issue for them. When you basically decided to change the backstory of the character, was it more to fit the story, or did you basically change that and then build the story around that?
I think it was a little of both. I think the thing that, when I read Cloak and Dagger, when I was in grade school, that's when the war on drugs was important, when it was a social issue. It's it's a different beast right now, so we thought them doing drugs and getting the superpowers was not necessarily the perfect analogy. So we started talking about what's happening right now, and one of the big things is, police brutality and unaccountability. So we thought that'd be an interesting story in the spirit of what Mantle did all that time ago. On top of it, just Tandy and her family being at the whim of a corporation. Since 1982, they've grown lots more powerful. So it kind of worked out in a way that their story, as we wanted to tell it, started becoming reflexive of the world, and sadly vice versa.
when you're breaking stories, you're a superhero show telling an origin story, but you're also a show that's dealing with heavy issues, discrimination, privilege, environmental issues. How are you and the writers balancing how much of your story is going to be world issues versus telling a good superhero drama?
I mean, I think the reason I put a diverse writers' room together was to make sure we can have those exact debates. Are we just telling the story to tell it? The big thing is, are we seeing something on TV that we haven't seen before? And I think if we're doing that, I think we're accomplishing both of those goals. There's so much television right now. So if you're having a conversation about privilege, I haven't seen it yet on TV, so that's good storytelling for me. Part of the beauty of it all is you can kind of put all those things together and put it in the hands of an Aubrey and Olivia, and you can accomplish great storytelling that kind of puts the vegetables under the mashed potatoes a little.
Have you had any discussions about Gina coming back to direct in season 2?
Yes, have you heard this?
No.
Gina and I have an unofficial, unlegal pact that I'm like, when are you coming back? She's like, when Tandy and Tyrone get together. So she wants to be there. She's an amazing human being, an amazing director who has such love for not only Tandy and Tyrone, but Aubrey and Olivia. And, you know, we check in a lot, so it's kind of fitting that the first time they get together that I would love for Gina to be at the helm.
So when are you thinking that?
That's going to be season, I'm not telling.
The way you incorporated kind of the lines of Cloak's costume from the comics was so ingenious.
Isn't it amazing?
And so perfect. Can you talk about the genesis of that idea and fitting New Orleans into it?
Yeah, I mean, like one of our writers, Marcus Guillory, we were talking about New Orleans and like, what does New Orleans have that the rest of the world doesn't? He's just a font of information. And he's like, well, what about the Mardi Gras Indians? And most of us in the room are like, what? And just to find out that there's these group of African-American men who, for a long time, have been paying homage to the Native Americans who helped them when they were runaway slaves or when they were freed slaves. And this has been going on, so we started looking at some of the beadwork, and we're like, I originally was like, we're never going to be able to do that black and white, and like the way they have the cloak, it'll just be a sheet. And then we looked at it, I'm like, this is how we do it. This is how we kind of, and it was one of those just amazing things where, you know, you bring in a writer with a different point of view, and he kind of held my hand and walked me to this place where we could kind of do a different turn on it.
Thank you all so much.